Oh my god, that's so thick. Oh my god. That's so big. Hello fellow book nerds, this is Gabby and it's time for a review of Once and Future Witches by Alex E. Harrow. So if you're not aware, Alex E. Harrow is the author of the $1,000 of January? $10,000 of January, which is like one of my favorite books of last year. That's why I decided to pick up her newest book. So this is her second ever book. I was really excited and I kind of decided that if this book is also as amazing as $10,000, Alex E. Harrow is probably gonna become one of my all-time favorite authors. Well, maybe not all-time favorite yet. She needs to work a bit harder for that.
Who the fuck does she think she is?
But she's become like an auto-buy or something. I'm gonna be super excited for all her releases. If you're not aware, I have a new series on my channel where I'm gonna be talking about the releases from the coming month, from the previous month. Yes. Sorry, I'm going to be talking about releases from the previous month. So this is the release for October. So this book was released very recently. In fact, I think it came out the 15th of October. So I want to review it for you as soon as possible. And like I said, this is a series. So if you want to vote on what book you want me to read next, watch this video and check out all the books that I talk about in there, and you can write in a comment which book you want me to review next month. Let's get into it. So this is only my second ever dedicated review, so it's gonna be a bit rough, but stick with me. So let's start with the synopsis maybe. So this is pitched as witchcraft means suffragette movement. So the book is set in the 1800s. It's happening at the same time as the suffragette movement was happening. If you don't know what suffragette movement was about, it was all about fighting for women's right to vote, and it was in general a movement for equality of women. So in this book we follow three sisters. One of them is Juniper, who is the youngest one. She has lived with their father the longest. Her sisters kind of left 7 years ago and she has lived with her father, but something happened and she has to escape from her home, and she goes to the city of New Salem where she catches up with her two other sisters. Her second sister is Agnes. She has been out of the house, like I said, for 7 years, and she now works in the mail and kind of has to grapple with her current situation, which is that she's pregnant. And then we have the third sister, Bella, who is the bookworm. She's a librarian and she's very fascinated by words and that kind of thing. During a suffragist rally, all of them end up in the same square and they get reunited. During the rally, the sky splits open and they can see a tower kind of in the stars. It's very weirdly described. They can see a tower in the stars and they know that this is the lost way of Avalon, aka the way for witches to reclaim witchcraft and find this power that has been dormant for quite a while. So firstly, let's talk about plots. So the plot is very fast-paced. There's a lot happening in this book. I mean, this is a chunky boy. It's over 500 pages long, but it reads very, very quickly because the action is just non-stop. There's a lot that happens and there's several, I think there's about 5 parts, and each part is equally interesting and it all kind of propels itself forward. There's some down moments, there's a lot of bonding and room for the characters to really show who they are, but overall the book is really fast-paced and a lot happens and it's really engaging despite the fact that it's about over 500 pages. I read this in maybe 4 days or something. It was really quick read. I could not put it down, and I was especially really impressed how in one book Alex E. Harrow managed to wrap up the story very satisfactorily. The whole book is a complete story that doesn't really leave anything out, isn't rushed. I feel like everything got a room to breathe and I really was happy with the conclusion. I think the climax of the story, sometimes writers really rush through it, sometimes they're making it not interesting, but this one was really, it was given a proper space in the pages, if that makes any sense. I feel like it was not just cut short because we have to finish the book or whatever, but it was appropriately extended and the stakes were higher and higher, and in the end it was quite sad what happened, but it was really appropriate and I think it served the story very well. The only thing with the plot is I feel like the suffragette movement meets witchcraft is kind of misleading. That is what happens, but the suffragette movement kind of happens alongside the witchcraft movements because the main characters get kind of kicked out of the suffragette movement. They start the witching movement. It's a common knowledge that witches are a thing in this world, but they're kind of subjugated, they're burned at stakes, you know, like the traditional witching things. It's still about suffragettes and kind of rights of women, because in this book witches are mainly women. So really, if you are fighting for the rights of witches, you're fighting for the rights of women. And if you wanted some really nice deep talks about feminism and women's movement, this definitely has it. Next up, let's do some writing. So the writing's beautiful. I mean, $10,000 of January was a beautifully written book, and this one's no different. It's absolutely gorgeous how the author manages to write beautiful purple prose, I would say, but still make it really easily readable, and you know what's happening, and you really understood each of the characters very well. So I highly recommend it for the writing if that's your thing. Now let's talk about characters. All the three of our main characters fall into a very well-defined archetype. So Juniper's the wild one, then Agnes the mother, and then Bella's the crone, or the bookworm, basically. I was a bit worried that the archetype is going to be all there is to them, and then they're just gonna embody their role well but not grow as characters beyond that, but that was not the case at all. At least I felt like through the story they all grew to become very distinct characters that fits the archetype a little, but still has so many nuances that they feel like real people. I really understood all of their motivations, where they were coming from. Like I said, Juniper, she's the wild one. She had to live with their abusive father by herself for a long time. She is this force of nature that just really wants something to change. She wants better for herself. And then Agnes, she is the mother, so she is pregnant. She has to think about more than herself. And I think Agnes was my favorite one. She did have some moments when you might feel frustrated because she's not following along the movement or whatever, but you really know where she's coming from, and you understand her motivations and her desire to protect her daughter as well as herself. And then we have Bella, who's the old crone and the bookworm, but she's so much more than that. She has this love for knowledge lady that's not interested in romance or whatever, and just loves her books, and there's nothing beyond that. Like I said, they kind of move away from those archetypes while still utilizing them, and I think that's very cool to show that each person and each woman isn't just this archetype, the Madonna or the W word complex, or she's not just either a saint or a sinner. You know, there's so much nuance to them. What I really loved about Agnes's story is that she does have a love interest. I was 1000% expecting for the author not to give her the love interest because she's the mother, so now her child is the one sole purpose, so she has to stick to that. But the author decided to give her a love interest. That feels really empowering, because I feel, because we as a society many times desexualize mothers. You're either pure maiden, and you're a sexual being, or you're a mother, and that's your purpose, and you don't find love and you don't find like sexual happiness kind of thing. But this book really didn't do that. Like I said, gave nuance, and I really appreciated that. And what I really like about the three main characters is that they have a very distinct feeling and voice. Sometimes when you have multiple characters, they can all feel like just the same kind of character. They don't have their own voice, but these were so distinct. I really think that utilizing the archetypes to show how distinct they are, but also humanizing them more, was a very smart move and very well executed. So I really enjoyed that. We also have multiple other characters. There's so many characters in this book. They're mainly women, but they're also men in this, and I think all of those characters were very well developed in the sense that they were distinct. I remember their names, I remember who they were, where they were coming from. I feel like in a lot of these ensemble casts, which this is to an extent, it's obviously about the three main sisters, it's their story, but these other women are a big part in them, and I had a very good remembrance of each character whenever they came up. Now let's talk about themes, which is probably my favorite part. So this book really is about feminism. It's just feminism. I mean, suffragette movement was like a wave of feminism, I think, because it was all about equality for women, women's rights, women's right to vote, which is like so monumental. And this book is about witchcraft, but this witchcraft is really an allegory, or like an adjacent field to the issue of feminism. I think it was done very well. All the discussions around feminism that you might have, but doesn't really go into like, do women deserve rights? Of course women deserve rights. So this story knows that, and witches deserve rights, and it shows how behind every witch there is a woman wrong. I think that's a line from the book, and I think that's really powerful and really shows that this movement is a especially suffragette movement, was all about empowering women, but we're still fighting this fight. And what I really loved about the portrayal of feminism here, it was how inclusive this feminism was. It wasn't just for white, straight, affluent women like the suffragette movement is in this book. And the suffragette movement was largely propelled by wealthy white women who didn't have to work, so they could go to the protests and they knew that they wouldn't be thrown in jail and killed or something, so they had a certain amount of protection. But the feminism and the witching in this book is inclusive of white, black, other people of color, poor, disabled, trans, men, includes all kinds of people into the feminism, and it acknowledges that the rights of everyone, if without including everyone, we can't be truly inclusive. So I really love the conversation around that, and you really can see how the suffragette movement versus the witching movement here, which is more inclusive, is they're really a different kind of conversations, and we need to have the conversation that includes everyone. This was done kind of very subtly actually, because it's not like they're just having these big proclamations and speeches about, oh no, we need to be inclusive to this. They're doing it through their action. They're doing it through including black women and poor women and trans women, and they have men sign up. So it really shows through their action that they're inclusive. Again, I really enjoy that they even included some men characters that were not just villains, not just the people to beat up. I mean, there's a lot of conversation when I just watched the analysis videos a lot. But there was a conversation around Charlie's Angels movie, the new one, where it was all men bashing and how that's very alienating. And this book's really not about men bashing. It's about, yes, they acknowledge that there are men who are abusive, who put women down, who just want power for themselves. And that's definitely a part of the story. It's part of the villain's story. But it's also showing men who are supportive, who want to join the fight for either the reason of love or just because they believe in the mission, you know, they believe in the equality. So that was a really cool part that I really appreciate the conversation there. I would say those are my main thoughts about the book. All in all, I really loved it. I think it was probably like a 4.5/5 stars. I haven't decided yet. What should it be? You know what? Let's give it a 5, because just now talking about all the good things about the book, I really convinced myself that I love it. I do love it. I did really enjoy my experience. I think Alex E. Harrow is gonna become an auto-buy offer for me, at least until she makes a dad, but so far it's so good. I mean, two of her books I absolutely loved. I think it has interesting conversations, is really inclusive and diverse, it has interesting perspectives, and I really think you guys should check it out. I would highly recommend it, and I would be so interested to hear your thoughts down in the comments on what you thought about the book if you've read it. I'm gonna share my favorite quote with you. That's also a segment I want to do. Okay, so this is the favorite quote segment. Agnes's man. What a novel, rather appealing arrangement to own a man rather than being owned by him. Yep, so that's my favorite quote. There's a lot of cool quotes there, and there's a lot of cool things to get out of it. I'm gonna link the Goodreads down below so you can check it out for yourselves. That's it for me then. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you could comment, like, subscribe, I would so appreciate it. But let me know what was your favorite October release that I should check out, and let me know what you thought about Once and Future Witches, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!